Hey guys, welcome back to the Diet Doc Life Mastery Podcast. I'm Dr. Kori Probst here with Dr. Joe Klemczewski. Good morning, Joseph.
How are you, Kori?
I'm well. How are you?
Great.
Awesome. Science or fiction today. And, you know, there's a lot of controversy surrounding artificial sweeteners. And
Never ending.
never ending. And their effect on fat loss, on body weight, on weight gain, on just overall health and longevity. Let's dive in.
Cancer, Alzheimer's, disease.
All of the above.
Government trying to kill us. Yeah. So
where do we start?
Let's start on your side of the screen, Kori, and talk about psychological incentives, psychological absorption capacity, negativity bias, because when we walk into a controversy like this, we typically have a bias. And I started a Facebook poll about this. It specifically being as antithetical and partisan as I could be. I said, you get to pick on artificial sweeteners. They are trying to kill us.
I missed this.
Or there's nothing to worry about. And so you didn't have any nuanced answer choices. You just had to pick apart. And I'll tell you the results of the poll so far in a little bit. But obviously, you know, we all have a human negativity bias. But then there are people who kind of bathe that in the lighter fluid of ignorance. And they light it with a match of disenfranchisement. And all of a sudden, everybody's trying to kill us. And everything's wrong. And you can never trust anybody. So that's one side that comes to this argument. Mm-hmm. But then there are more than 1,000 legitimate studies on this topic. Are they safe? Do they have FDA approval? Do they have a European FDA equivalent? They have a health and safety authority organization over there. And so there's a lot to comb through. Mm-hmm. But I don't want to discount the fact that we could be duped because there's a lot of incentive on the manufacturer's side.
Sure.
So let me finish this one thought, then I want you to comment. So there are those people who come at this with like, yes, they're obviously just trying to murder us all. But then the real incentive on the other side is there are people trying to make a living, scientists, researchers looking for funding. If you have a company that has this great product and all of a sudden, first of all, you're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to lobbyists to lobby the FDA and get this approval. And if it goes south, I mean, that could be the end of you, the end of your career. Yeah. So even if something is not safe, there is a lot of incentives to still pass it through. Yeah. And, so let's talk about both sides of that. And I'd love to hear your thoughts from a general psychological perspective on how we should approach this.
Well, so there's the negativity bias. There are a whole host of other biases, though, that would play a role in this as well. And just the confirmation bias. Hey, what if I'm a Diet Coke drinker? I've had Diet Coke for years. Or what if I like white Monsters? Who said that?
I see a case of them stacked up behind you, like palette.
It's my one vice. But so I am biased towards believing that those monsters aren't going to kill me. One a day it's perfectly safe. It's just fine. And, most people are going to look for the research that is in their favor towards whatever they believe. I also, though, tend to be someone who if it's called artificial, and there's all this controversy around it, then there probably is plenty of information out there showing that you probably shouldn't be consuming it. And if you're questioning whether it's actually good for you and if it's harming you in some way, then let's use that as information to maybe change our behavior a little bit. That's kind of where I'm landing, just based on your first question, Joe.
Yeah, and I know I'm blindsiding you with this, but I think you said something there that was perfect as a segue into the actual research, which is you know, these are artificial sweeteners. There are 5 approved by the FDA. Interestingly, this is what's funny. Speaking of controversy, stevia is not approved by the FDA because it's natural. And so this is almost like creating a patent. So again, here, all the lobbyist money, all the people trying to get artificial chemicals that they can patent through, they get accepted, but something that's actually shown to be totally safe and even has health benefits, you know, that cannot be labeled as an FDA approved artificial sweetener or just sweetener in general. But what you said was, well, you know, maybe one a day won't kill me. So let's start with the premise that artificial sweeteners are not made to be good for us. Like,
no.
we're not, nobody out there is trying to say, hey, this is going to improve your health. If you just take 20 packets a day, your immune system is going to be better. It's going to decrease all these risks of cancer. It's just, I mean, their whole pitch is, well, it's better than sugar.
Right.
And we hope it doesn't cause cancer. You know, that's where we're doing all the research, and we think we've proven that effectively, which I'll talk about in a minute. So I agree with you. You know, am I just going to just guzzle down liters of this stuff every day? Am I going to put packets on everything I consume? I mean, absolutely not. So I think a lot of us hedge our bets with, yeah, it may not be good for me, so I'll at least moderate it. So here's what's interesting, Kori, in the research. Even though the FDA and other agencies I mean, I looked up the National Cancer Institute, people like WebMD, like I said, the European Safety Authority, they all say, well, out of these 500 studies or these 372 studies or these 600 studies that we analyze and 25 meta-analyses, we found maybe 10 studies that show that it does increase your risk of this cancer about this much, but most of them don't. So there's never a clean slate where people are saying absolutely zero chance of anything going wrong. They're saying, yeah, maybe, and then they'll try and discount those studies based on their bias, you know, whatever their, you know, whoever's writing their paycheck. So yeah, I think we're going to end this by saying there's still some stuff we just don't know, but there are, like I said, more than 1,000 studies that say it's very, very difficult to show any serious link.
Is there, Joe, a certain amount that the research is showing becomes harmful and detrimental? I've read that, and it probably depends on the type of artificial sweetener, that like Saccharine, for example, the approved FDA amount with no harmful effects is like 5 milligrams per kilogram of body weight per day. But do you know what the research is showing?
So here's what's interesting. You bring up Saccharine. When Saccharine first came out, because it was the first artificial sweetener approved by the FDA made them put a label on every product that contained it that said this may cause cancer. Because all of their initial research showed that it may.
In rats.
But then again, when the whole lobbying industry became a thing, and people like aspartame came on board, you know, 20 years ago, they said, yeah, well, we don't have to do that anymore. But the FDA says that they have tested up to what you would consume in terms of 18 diet soft drinks a day.
Oh my goodness. And so there are people who drink that much, though.
I know. But see, and here's, you know, you brought up a point that we're going to talk about body fat loss as well.
Yeah.
There are absolute studies that show the more direct correlation, the more diet soft drinks you consume, the more artificial sweetener you consume, your risk of metabolic syndrome goes up by 35, 40%. Your risk of type 2 diabetes goes up 67 to 70%. Direct correlation. Now, you can argue the chicken or the egg, you know. If we're looking at people who are always, quote, dieting and always looking for artificial sweeteners, they're probably struggling with sweetness as a taste. And so they could be consuming other things. But there are some interesting studies that do counter the fact that there's nothing to worry about.
Well, and I've read studies too about how the use of them changes the gut microbiome, and how that has an impact on glucose tolerance and how your body actually utilize and insulin, the effectiveness of insulin.
Which to me would lend credit to that theory or the actual studies that show that it does increase your risk of type 2 diabetes. Right. Because, you know, anecdotally, here's one of the things I wanted to chat about. You and I both have had tons of clients that, you know, whether they're struggling or not, we may end up bridging the gap into artificial sweeteners and say, well, how many, let's look at that.
Absolutely.
And to a person, anybody that has been what I would call abusive with these things, where they are using 15, 20, 30 servings a day, and that could be a diet soft drink or 12, to packets on their oatmeal, packets in their coffee, packets in their tea. To a person, every time we've reduced that substantially or eliminated it, they lost body fat so much faster, hunger went down. Right. I tested this on myself. When I'm dieting and my everything is super linear, food intake is down to the gram exactly where I want it, even small amounts of artificial sweetener make my hunger go through the roof. And I even get hypoglycemic. I can drink a small amount of a Diet Mountain Dew, and the rest of the afternoon I'm hypoglycemic. And on days I don't do that, I don't have a problem.
That's really interesting, Joe. I've experienced the same thing. Difference in, you know what, everything is psychological and physical. Like, they're intimately connected. I could be justifying wanting to continue drinking Monster, but what I was going to say is that doesn't have the same effect for me as a diet soda does. I like both because I enjoy the fizz of it, but they have a different effect. Gum has a very different effect on me. If I chew that in between meals, I feel hypoglycemic. I used to chew gum like crazy. I don't anymore because of that feeling. But so then we bring up the issue that everyone is going to respond differently to them, to artificial sweeteners also.
Yeah, and I think, you know, part of what you're experiencing may be the different type. I mean, I find aspartame does that for me. And aspartame, you know, it's just 2 amino acids, you know, aspartic acid and phenylalanine. You have to say, what harm would that be? But, you know, they do have all the anecdotal evidence of, you know, I wouldn't say it causes Alzheimer's, but a lot of people, and there are a lot of correlational data points to show that there could be a problem for some people some of the time. You know, I'm not going to go there, but I've tried to get most of mine from sucralose because I know if I have a diet soft drink with that, it doesn't tend to bother me. Right. And so I think you can whittle it down to that point. But you know, my final advice on this topic would be, you know, my gosh, we've had 40 years or more of research, most of it done in the last 10 or 15 years. All of these science agencies, including the National Cancer Institute and the FDA and the European Safety Authority, everybody has looked at every piece of data they can, and they say maybe this much of a risk increase. So dose is important. And then you have to decide if what's the alternative? If I don't have that, will I have full sugar? I think it's like it's like a car. You know, are cars dangerous? Do you have a risk of dying in a car? Yes, but you're not going to give up your car. 30,000 people a year die in car accidents. I don't think that many people.
You probably won't die just sitting in your car in your driveway unless you asphyxiate. But once you get on the road and you're surrounded by other cars and people who can't think and are using too much artificial sweetener.
So, you know, yeah. And it is the artificial sweetener drink that you're drinking that makes you crash. That's the real conspiracy.
Yeah.
But it's, I think it's like that. It's like, you're not going to give up your car, but you moderate your behavior. You take precautions, you do everything well. And that's, I think how you've come down on it personally, as well as me. I'm conscious of how much I consume. Maybe it's the equivalent of one diet soft drink or diet energy drink per day. I don't put packets of anything on anything. I don't cook with stuff like that. And so I consider myself pretty low risk. I don't think I'm going to die because of artificial sweetener.
Yeah.
But if you're somebody out there who is just addicted to this stuff, maybe it's worth moderating and trying different, versions, or, just seeing how it does affect you.
Well, I agree, Joe. And coming back to, if you're feeling addicted, if there is this sense of urgency to have more, like, gotta go get my fix, or need another packet, or we can't necessarily taste anything sweet anymore until we dump a bunch of Splenda on it or something, that's enough information to have. Take health completely out of it. Just that pull, that sense of urgency, that's a good cue to kind of take a look at what you're doing and why, and see if something needs modifying.
Yep. So, I would say in science or fiction, I'm going to put my stamp down on it's okay in moderation, because, as you said, Kori, that's my confirmation bias. I want it to be okay, but I'm going to leave the door open for those bastards who are just trying to make money, and they're spending all kinds of lobbying dollars to get it done. That's real. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but that's just real economics behind everything that is in front of us as a choice. So make your decisions wisely, make your decisions carefully on both sides.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe.
All right, Kori. Appreciate you guys watching and listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks, guys.